A St. Louis physician is helping children dream of their future. We'll have that story for you next on City Corner. I'm Steve Potter, and welcome to City Corner. Dr. Ashley Denmark is a family physician at BJC who has written a children's book that she hopes will inspire children to sort of fulfill their dreams. Dr. Denmark, welcome to the program.
Thank you for having me.
The name of your book is Olivia's Doctor Adventures, and we're going to talk about more about that a little bit later. But obviously, it's a small book, and it's written for very young people.
Yes.
Who is this designed for exactly?
Well, I would say for age groups 4 and up, and the goal is just to simply introduce them to the idea of becoming a doctor. And not only that, but exposing them to the different types of doctors that they can become.
Mm-hmm. And your interest in this was just because that was your dream?
Well, it was my dream, of course, as a child, but also my daughter, Olivia, who the book is based on, when she was 3, she had a brain surgery, and so from that, she became interested in the different fields of medicine. And so she began a dialogue about it and talk about it and write about it, and we turned into this book to inspire the children.
Now, you've used the term before, I know, that you want to normalize success. Normalize success. What do you mean by that?
I want children to normalize the fact that they can become anything they dream of. I feel like sometimes, especially in communities I grew up in or other urban communities in the country, the spectrum for what they can be is sometimes narrowed. And so I want to kind of normalize the idea of that you can dream big, actually obtain those dreams, and be successful at them. So normalizing that idea and thought.
I guess that sort of applies to everybody, no matter what color or sex you are, right? Some people have a tougher time with it for obvious reasons than others.
Yes.
But we all sort of need to see that as kids, an example of what we can become, right?
Exactly. You cannot become what you cannot see. And I think children everywhere need to be able to see themselves in these positions right here. So that's why we wrote the book.
Mm-hmm. And I guess it goes without saying, but tell me why it is so much tougher for an example, a young kid of color growing up to find role models in all sorts of fields. It's not as easy. Well, it's much better now than it used to be.
It is much better, but there's still much work that we have to do. Just from my perspective, growing up as a child, I didn't have easy access to a physician. I didn't have a neighbor who was a doctor, or I didn't have primary care clinics in Jennings. And so I had to travel all the way out to Clayton or Ladue just to go see a doctor. And so you didn't have those type of opportunities as easily available to you. Compared to my daughter now, who, again, comes home and sees mommy in a white coat and thinks, hey, I can be a doctor, and she sees that as something she can do. Yeah. Me growing up, I did have some reservations about that.
Yeah, I guess, I realized I kind of had it lucky as a white male, because me growing up, I pretty much thought I could do anything, because I saw people that looked like me on TV doing most things.
Exactly.
But I can imagine growing up, whether you're a woman or a person of color, and not seeing any examples in certain fields, you just assume that that's not for you, right?
You do kind of start assuming that you're not supposed to be in that field, that you're not supposed to be in that role. And so again, just me even pushing through this journey, it's been kind of a just amazing thing to see actually come to fruition now.
It's happened in a lot of different ways. When I was young, a guy would never have thought, it never occurred to me I could be a nurse. But today, no one thinks anything about guys being nurses. But when I was young, it would never have crossed my mind.
And again, that's what I'm saying, broadening the spectrum, saying you can become anything. It doesn't have to be a male just because you're a doctor, or you don't have to be just a nurse because you're a female. You can be anything you want to be.
It's nice to have options, isn't it?
Yes, it is.
Well, how did you get your options? How were you so smart that you figured this out?
Honestly, I was just hard-headed. If you want to know the real truth, I always had a passion for learning about medicine and science. I was sick as a child. I had asthma. So I always go to the hospital. I was fascinated with my pediatrician, and I was like, I want to be just like him when I grow up. And when I said I want to become a doctor...
But he was probably some old white guy, wasn't he?
He was. But
I was just guessing.
But in a child's eye, you don't really think about the inequalities that happen. You just think, I want to be like him. And
right.
I didn't realize how hard that journey would be as a child. But again, just kind of coming forth with that journey, I was just really hard-headed or determined to kind of make that happen, especially when people told me, with mixed reviews, like, hey, I don't know if that's something for you. You're black, you come from Jennings, you don't have enough money.
People really said that to you?
Yes, it did.
can I explore a little, Ashley?
Yeah, sure. Go ahead.
You said you grew up in Jennings.
Yes, I did.
It's a two-parent home, as I understand, right? I think your dad was a carpenter.
Yes, he was.
You're one of a couple of kids, aren't you?
I am one of
siblings?
two.
One of two? Well, tell me, who were your parents before you came along? Can you give me their little bios?
My mom is one of three children from Starksville, Mississippi. Her mother died at the age of 12, and so she was raised by her extended family. And my dad was actually one of six children, grew up in the Pura-Igo projects.
No kidding.
Yes, he did. And so he had, they met together in high school and became high school sweethearts and married in the 1970s and settled in Jennings back in 1979.
Was your mom a stay-at-home mom?
No, she worked. She was the one who wanted to go to work, and so she was actually the first one in her family to actually go to college. And so she went up to Cornell College in Iowa for 4 years and graduated with a bachelor's.
What kind of work did she do?
She actually licensed daycares around the state of Missouri. So if they need to be in regulation or compliance, she would be the one who would be make sure they're in regulation.
And your dad was a carpenter.
Yes, he was.
What was his work day like?
Basically, whenever they called him. He would go to work pretty early. He always woke up about 4 o'clock in the morning, basically making his lunch, getting ready, out the door by 4:30, home by 4.
But your dad growing up in Pruitt-Igoe, it seems like he got ahead in life because coming from that background, to be a carpenter and have your own home and live in Jennings was getting out of the projects, right?
It was, and especially, again, Jenny's demographics had definitely changed between now and then. As my mom talked about, it was a mixed population back then, and so, again, for them, they were realizing their dream of
And you're saying it's primarily black now, and back
primarily
then
black.
it wasn't.
Back then it wasn't, and so for them to have a home in Jennings and realizing their own dreams was everything for them. So, again, settling down, but as things progressed through time, things changed.
So when you were a little girl, you said you were interested in medicine, but what were your other interests? Did you have any other dreams besides that?
I wanted to work at McDonald's.
You wanted to?
It was a joke. When I was 4 years old, I used to say that all the time. Everyone jokes about how I always said I wanted to work at McDonald's for chicken nuggets. But actually, I loved art. That's really a true passion of mine still. I'm still very creative with that. I do photography. So I'm just still very creative with art.
I was an artist when I was younger, too.
Oh, okay.
Do you still like chicken McNuggets?
Not really.
I'm going to ask you for your medical opinion on them, but I won't go there.
I'll save that for another show.
Okay. So here you are, young Ashley, growing up in Jennings. Do you remember the first time that you said you had asthma, and because you spent so much time, I guess, being treated, you were thinking, you saw doctors all the time.
Yes.
So do you remember when it first occurred to you that's kind of what you wanted to do and what your thoughts were?
I remember it was like when I was 7, and I just kind of, again, it was like after my 3rd or 4th admission to the hospital, Children's Hospital, and Dr. Plax coming to see me, and he made me feel so much better, just, happier being in the hospital. As a kid, it's kind of scary, and he would come over from the office just to say hi, bring me toys, and I just remember like wanting to be like him in that role.
Connecting with people like that?
Connecting with people like that and wearing my white coat and making people feel better, because he literally always saved my life, because I was always in the ICU by the time I got to the hospital, and he literally saved my life. So.
But like watching on TV, what we were talking about before, you didn't really see any role models for that in your life, did you?
I didn't, but it didn't deter me at the time. Again, I just thought, hey, I can do this. And especially as I got older, when I tried to pursue that dream, I started doing summer programs to kind of get exposure to going into medical
Like,
field.
what did you do?
I actually went down to University of Rolla for a summer to kind of learn about different medical fields and also learn about chemistry. So it was like a chemistry camp. And you also went to the hospitals to kind of work as well. And I also worked at BJC as a transporter, just kind of getting, again, exposure into medicine.
What's a transporter?
Oh, actually, that's where someone comes out of surgery and they push you to your room.
Really, that's a job.
That's a job. And that's what I did at 16.
I have no idea. Well, I have a feeling that your parents had to be, maybe both of them, had to be influential with giving you a positive response to this and encouragement, right? Because if they hadn't, I don't know if you'd have given up or not.
I really feel like it was my parents' motivation and encouragement through the whole journey. I really felt like they were constant. As you become a doctor, a lot of people can give a little, support, but then take it back sometime and say, well, it's not happening fast enough, or can you really do it, or are you really qualified to do it? But my mom and dad were always just, if I wanted to go to the moon, they'll build a rocket ship for me. They always just supported me no matter what. Like, they never say, like, you can't do it, like, you're not able to. I
had parents like that too, and I had different things growing up that I wanted to be an artist for a while, and wanted to be an astronomer, and whatever it was, you know, they'd buy me a telescope during that phase.
Oh, exactly.
And we're lucky to have parents like that because not all kids get that.
Not all kids get that. And that's why I have the book, hopefully.
Yeah. Well, you, Dr. Denmark, you made reference to it earlier about kind of negative response you would get when you were young, thinking, or when you would express that you wanted to go into this field. Do you remember some of those first negative comments? I would think they'd be stuck in your mind, like you could see the person's face right now.
They were all throughout, I would say. But the one that I guess stuck out of my mind the most was when I finally got my acceptance to college. I had decided to apply to Xavier and Spelman being one of the top historically black schools for African American females. I applied and actually got accepted. And my college counselor, who I really looked up to, had really wanted me to go to a local college here or a college down in Mississippi. And I told him, no, I want to go to Spelman. And he said, you know, I don't think you're going to make it there. What makes you think you're different? And I was shocked because, you know, we had a relationship and we always dialogued. And when he said those words to me, I just couldn't believe he was saying that. He said, it's better to be a big fish in a little pond than a little fish in a big pond. And I was just floored. Like, you know, here I am so proud of my letter and he's telling me not to go. And I was really conflicted. I mean, I still remember the day of going to Spelman crying in the car, like, I don't think I should go. I don't think I'm going to make it. But that was probably one of the biggest moments I remember.
It seems like a person in that position should be encouraging your dream.
Yes. But again, sometimes, coming from, I kind of understand his sentiment. When I was graduating at that time, before then, 6 of the valedictorians had not completed college. They had went to community college or a local college, had not completed. So I can understand the reservations. But again, we have to kind of balance that with encouragement and trying to support someone and giving them the wings to kind of fly, even though you may have your own reservations.
Mm-hmm. Well, it sounds like your parents are sort of middle class. I'm sure they weren't rich. No. So didn't money stand in the way too? Because any college education would be costly, but becoming a doctor is more so.
Of course, always. I've worked in every position I can imagine. I used to work at Macy's in Jamestown. I used to be a baker at a grocery store. I used to work at CVS. I did anything I could to kind of, you know, secure the funds for my medical education and my undergraduate education. I was fortunate enough that my dad was able to secure loans for me to go to Spelman College, and he was willing to do that for me. So,
How long have you been in practice now?
I've been in practice for actually about 6 months.
That's all?
Yes.
Oh, I didn't realize that.
Well, I've been training for 3 years, and so that's considered practice. But here in St. Louis, it's been 6 months.
Oh, that's fascinating. And when did the idea to write this book come about? How did that happen?
It actually happened about a year ago, actually. And so again, me and my daughter just dialoguing about the fields of medicine. She actually said, you know, you should write a book. She was like 5 at the time, and I was just kind of, you know, I was like, okay, sure, you know, kind of blew her off. She kept saying it, and I guess one day I just saw her just talking about, you know, dressing up in her doctor white coat, and she was like, I can be a doctor, and I just remember how empowered she was. And I didn't feel that way when I was a kid. And I was like, if she feels this way seeing me, I'm sure other kids will feel that way if they have this in their hands. So.
We need to take a little break, but
Okay.
I'm going to pick up on this when we come back and talk a little bit about your daughter and how she inspired this book and more specifically what's in it. We're talking to Dr. Ashley Denmark, and we'll get back to more City Corner right after this.
Here's your check. Oh, you got it. You know, since I got rid of my car, I really enjoy walking.
Okay. Gone. No?
Getting pulled over for buzz driving could cost you around $10,000 in fines, legal fees, and increased insurance rates.
Oh, you're home early.
You live with your mom?
That'll set your game back a few years. Buzzed, busted, and broke. Because buzz driving is drunk driving.
Hi. You think you're probably sober?
Yeah.
But you're thinking about taking the back roads home, just in case. Why would you do that?
Probably okay isn't okay. Call a cab, a car, or a friend.
Good choice.
I'm Steve Potter. Welcome back to City Corner. And our guest today is Dr. Ashley Denmark, and she's written this book for children. It's Olivia's Doctor Adventures. And we're going to talk more about that, but I have a medical question to ask you first.
Okay.
And this is very timely.
Okay.
Everyone I know, you don't mind if I ask for free medical advice, do you?
Go ahead.
Everyone I know, including myself, has been really sick. I've gotten over it over the last couple of months with like bronchitis or the flu. Was it extra bad this year, or what have you seen?
It has been bad this year, from what I've heard the statistics so far. Where I'm practicing at Sunset Hills, we have not seen as much, but definitely it has been more outbreaks, more in the southern states more recently. So again, just encouraging everyone to still wash your hands. If you suspect you have the flu, please go see your doctor to get treated immediately, because actually that medication that we give you, the Tamiflu, only has a 2-day window where you can actually use it, where it's effective. So it's important to see your doctor immediately. And then also, again, make sure you have your flu vaccination. I know it's late in the season, but you can still try to get one.
This late in the season, the flu vaccine?
Yeah, you still get it. Still get it.
And what do you want to say to those people out there? There's still some people that are against being vaccinated. Aren't I right? There's no reason for anyone not to get a vaccination.
There are certain reasons, depending on, like, again, if they're immunocompromised, depending on if they're receiving some sort of treatment. But again, most people should qualify for it. Having fever or illness is not a reason why, which is a common thing people say. But again, we encourage people to get the flu vaccine because we are aware of the fact that it does prevent some of the bad side effects from the flu that result in you being in the ICU and causing death. So it may not be the most perfect vaccination that can prevent you from getting the flu shot, the flu itself, but it can at least prevent you from having some of those bad outcomes that I've often treated in the ICU or telling families that their loved one has passed away.
Right, and flu sure can affect, the older you get, can be more hazardous to your health.
Yes, there are certain risk populations that are more at risk, especially those children under the age of 5 and also geriatric populations as well. So you're at more at risk for that.
Yeah, and spring is here. Does the flu season normally go this late into the, or this
Yes.
early into the year, however you put it?
We're seeing a peak right now, but as well, it can stretch out as far as into May or June even. I worked in South Carolina, and I was treating flu all the way up into June last year.
Okay, well, good. Let's get back to your book, Olivia's Doctor Adventures. Now, the character in your book, and let me just start too, that this is designed for pretty young kids.
Pretty young kids, but I have been seeing it used by older kids as well who, again, just don't know what type of doctors it can be. And so I found that junior high have even gravitated to this book because they want to know about what's an orthopedic surgeon or what's a neurosurgeon.
Right. Yeah, I guess when you're 6 years old, a doctor is a doctor.
A doctor's a doctor,
Yeah.
but
So Olivia, you have a daughter named Olivia.
yes, I do.
Who inspired this, I guess.
Yes.
And she had a medical condition early on.
Yes.
What did she go through?
Well, Olivia is my oldest. She's been with me through my whole medical journey. I went to med school 36 weeks pregnant with Olivia. And so when she became 3, she started having seizures. And we were not aware of why she was having them, but she wound up having a cavernous malformation, which is where the vessels tend to be very thin and rupture and result in a bleed in the brain that can cause a seizure. So we had to go have that removed through a procedure called craniotomy, which is a brain surgery where they're opening the skull to remove that particular vessel. She's perfectly fine now, but through that experience, she became really interested in what mommy did all day. She's like, so you're a doctor? Because she actually was at my hospital when we found this information out. And so she would see me in my white coat, and she realized that you're a doctor just like them.
Now, Dr. Denmark, are you sure you didn't push her? I'm being facetious, but you know how a lot of parents, you're a doctor, so you sure you weren't giving her hints and trying to push her in that direction like parents do?
You have to meet my Olivia. Olivia is just, I feel like, and I know every parent says that, but she's just her own individual. She's 7 going on 30, and she's always been a quiz, always.
7 going on 30?
Yes. But she's always been a quiz, always just been very just sharp and smart and just always on it and always wanting to explore different things. So.
So the book starts with the mom, you, I guess,
Me.
And Olivia having a discussion.
Yes.
Just describe it for me.
So the book opens up with just me coming home, or mom coming home, and children come to the door because I have 3 children, and it just kind of goes into our regular family routine, which I think it's important to highlight positive images of Black family because again, I think we need to have that in our literature out there.
So when you say that, you mean like a 2-parent home and
2-parent home,
they're
normalizing.
working and whatever,
Exactly.
paying their bills. And
Normalizing it, and it's saying this is another spectrum, another possibility you can see as a family dynamic, possibly. And so we go into our conversation about just learning about her wanting to become a doctor and what can she be. And so I, as a mom, kind of go through the different options she can kind of go through.
How many are there?
A million. Too many for the show. But I kind of focus with the book with the ones that children most commonly see or come in contact with, which is what I kind of explained to Olivia, because those are the ones that I think she'll probably see if she were to get sick in her lifetime. So we focus on different ones like psychiatry or pediatrics. We talk about different surgeons, dentists, pharmacists. We talked about OBGYNs, which everyone wondered, how did you broach that topic? But it's very classy.
Wait, let me look.
I can read that section, but it's very classy. But again, just kind of briefly giving a 1-2 line sentence about what they do and trying to give them simple ways to say, a bone doctor is a...
Why don't you just maybe pick out one or two and kind of share that with us, and so we can get an idea of how you're doing what you say that you're doing.
Okay, all right. So you can also be a psychiatrist. They help people deal with feelings including sadness, anger, shyness, or worrying. They find ways to make people happy.
And that's all you say about that?
That's all. And again, it just shows the pictures, just showing what a psychiatrist do, just showing that. And then I'll go to the OBGYN so everyone can know how.
Okay, I'm curious about that one.
Obstetrician gynecologists take care of babies and women. They help take care of moms when they are carrying your brother or sister in their belly and help deliver them into the world. They also help make sure women like your mom, aunt, or grandmother stay healthy. And again, it's showing a simple picture. So I felt like for this age group, I didn't want to go too much into more detail in that regards because I want to kind of keep their attention, keep them focused, and then move on to another topic.
And then what do they do after the child reads that and is entered in something? What's their next step?
So after they do this, after they read this book, actually we hoping that they'll kind of start having this conversation with their mom and dads about, hey, I want to be a doctor. What do I need to do? And so that's where we come in because we're actually trying to start a home kit line of books, a home kit that will be based on this book that kind of give them activities to do at home that are based on the medical field.
Can you paint a picture of that, what that might be like?
So it'll be called the Future Doctor Box, and in it will be an activity based on one of those type of doctors in the book. So for orthopedic surgeon, we want to give them like a gown and little gloves and talk about hand washing, which is something a surgeon does all the time, and the importance of it. And we'll also give them like a small list of vocabulary words that they can use, simple things, but it's again, start their mind thinking.
The artwork is very nice, and of course it has to be to catch a little kid's attention, right?
Yes, it is.
So is it Motz, Mike Motz?
Yes, Mike Motz did everything. He did the illustrations.
Tell me about him.
He's amazing. So he actually has his own company. It's based in Canada, but he's actually worked with a lot of physicians around the U.S. and getting their books out. And so I actually saw his name with a book of a person I knew in Charleston. She's an anesthesiologist. She's actually the first black anesthesiologist at MUSC, and she put out her book. And I was like, oh, let me call him up, and because I had this idea. And he said, I like the story, let's submit it, let's get it together. So I submitted the manuscript, and he started doing the pictures.
Yeah, you talk about breaking down barriers. I may not have the statistics right, but isn't it something like, as far as doctors go, black women, 2% maybe, or something incredible like that?
2%. 2% of us. And so to break that number down even further, if you think about all the physicians in this country, it's 850,000. And when you think about 2% being black females, that's only 17,000. So that's pretty...
How many black female doctors do you know personally in the metro area?
Personally, I know of 4, but I know there are more here.
Right.
But again, we're spread out far and few between. And I happen to work with luckily one Dr. Collins across the hall from me. So
Yeah, now you do family medicine at BJC.
yes, I do family medicine.
So what does that really mean?
So family medicine is a broad spectrum general practice, basically. For my practice, I do newborns and up, which means I see children. I do adult medicine, I do geriatrics, and also women's health.
Huh. You also do some other things. You do like a sort of a live stream mentoring program or something?
Yes, so through my journey through medicine, I realized there was just not enough of minority representation in the medical field we just talked about. And so I started channeling those energies into figuring out how I can use my voice to bring awareness to this. And so through that, I created a platform called Project Diversified Medicine, which focuses on inspiring and encouraging future doctors who are of color. And so that is on my IG community. Has about 17,000 followers now. It's really grown from when I started 3 years ago. But again, I show visual representation of minorities in their field, actually doing, in their white coats. I give them tips on how to navigate and getting into medical school. I do a live IG live stream on the weekends called On Call with Dr. Denmark, where they can come and talk to me. And that was motivated from my own experience of not having access to a doctor to talk to about how to get into medical school.
Right.
So.
And aren't you doing something that I think your daughter, maybe it was Olivia, inspired, about books for black girls?
Yes, Black Girl Books Matter is really my daughter's literacy campaign. When we lived in South Carolina, we went to Barnes & Noble, and we couldn't find any books that had black girls on them. We had found one, but we couldn't find anything else.
Which is the same thing you're talking about, some little kid seeing somebody that looks like them.
Exactly. And so she said, our books matter too. And so that's kind of how we got the title Black Girl Books Matter too. And so through that campaign, she's actually raising awareness about the need to have more minorities in books that look like her. And she's actually collected over 200 books to give back to little black girls around the country.
You know, all doctors are not created equal.
Yes.
I found that, you can be a very smart doctor and know all the technical stuff, but there, people skills and being compassionate, some doctors are better at it than others, but I'm sure you would argue that's pretty darn important.
Very important, because in order for you to be able to connect with the patient and make sure that they understand what they're doing and what you want them to do, you have to be able to relate to them and show compassion. And even on the bad days, you have to understand why they may be having these feelings. So it's very important to relate in that way.
Like, some patients that don't, I think I read something that you were talking about once, and like patients that don't take their medicine or don't show up for appointments. I guess if a doctor's really doing their job, they look into that more, right? The psychology of it?
The psychology, yes. So that's taking a holistic approach. And again, I think that speaks to why it's important to try to have more minorities in the field who we have that experience. Because I had that experience of saying, hey, I didn't have enough money to go drive to, go to my doctor today. I didn't have enough money to get my medication. So I have those experiences I can draw on to understand that.
And how do we get your book?
So my book is available on Amazon.com or my website, www.oliviadrventures.com.
And I think sometimes you're making it available, I think at no charge for certain groups sometimes.
Yes, I actually do that. So again, I have organizations reach out and say they want to do like certain events, and I do give them a book.
One final question for you. I think it's apparent, to me anyway, how this book affects other people and young people that would read it and who are developing and exploring. How has doing this book affected you?
I think it's opened up my whole world into this knowing that I know I do stuff in the clinic and in the clinic exam room, but just going beyond the clinic exam room and making an impact in my community. And I realize I have the power and platform to do that, and so that's what I want to do.
Well, thank you for doing just that,
Thank
Dr.
you.
Denmark, and thanks for being here, and thanks for the advice on the flu. Not too late to get vaccinated,
Not
right?
too late. And not too late.
Thank you so much, and I'm sure you're going to do a follow-up on this someday.
Yes, I will.
We'll talk to you again.
Yes, thank you.
Dr. Ashley Denmark, thanks so much, and thank you at home for watching City Corner. I'm Steve Potter, and we'll see you next time. Bye.